The debate hall was electric, a hush falling over the room as the cameras flickered to life. Jasmine Crockett stood poised at the podium, her back straight, her gaze unwavering. In front of her, Elon Musk, arms crossed, a smirk barely contained behind his steely gaze. The crowd shifted uncomfortably, tension thickening the air. Musk had already interrupted her 8 times, each more condescending than the last. His arrogant posture, the way he leaned in, as if daring her to speak, he seemed to think this was his stage to own. But not today. Musk's voice cut through the silence like a whip, sharp and dismissive. "Ms. Crockett, you're completely missing the point. You really think you can take on someone like me?" A ripple of laughter bubbled up from Musk's side of the room, his supporters, many of them tech elites and big money donors, chuckling behind their hands. Crockett's jaw tightened, but she didn't flinch. She didn't let the crowd sway her. "Mr. Musk," she said, her voice a controlled fury, "I'm not here to take you on. I'm here to present facts, not insults. You, on the other hand, seem to be more interested in your own ego than the truth." Musk scoffed, leaning forward again with the kind of arrogance that had become his trademark. "You're out of your league here, darling. You don't get it. You're not playing in the same sandbox as the rest of us." The audacity. The audacity to belittle her, to treat her as if she didn't have the legal firepower and moral clarity to go toe-to-toe with him. The crowd was on edge, waiting for her to react. The drama was palpable: Musk, a billionaire, a tech mogul who had reshaped the world, versus Crockett, the rising star who refused to back down. The contrast between their personas was striking. Her icy stare locked with his, steady and unbroken. There was no fear in her eyes, only the calm before the storm. But what Musk didn't know, her 9th point was about to change everything. The stakes were higher than anyone could have imagined. This wasn't just a debate, it was a showdown between 2 opposing visions for the future of America. On one side, you had Elon Musk, a self-made tech billionaire, the founder of revolutionary companies, a man who had reshaped the world with his innovation. But with that innovation came power. Power to bend laws. Power to influence governments. Power to escape consequences. Musk wasn't just a figurehead in the tech industry, he was the embodiment of Silicon Valley's unchecked dominance. His empire had grown so vast, so entwined with every aspect of modern life, that many had started to believe he was untouchable. But tonight, in front of millions of viewers, it wasn't just about his success, it was about the integrity of the system. Musk, with his near-impervious wealth and influence, had become a symbol of corporate arrogance, the kind of figure who thought he could act above the law and dodge accountability. And that's exactly what he was trying to do here tonight, undermine the very legal system that held corporations like his to account. Across from him, standing tall and resolute, was Jasmine Crockett, a lawyer and political figure whose rise had been nothing short of meteoric. She wasn't a politician who'd bought her way into the system. She had fought for everything she had, clawing her way to the forefront of a movement that stood for justice, accountability, and, above all, the people. Crockett wasn't here for personal glory. She was here for the public she represented, the working class, the marginalized, the ones who had been trampled underfoot by the very kind of elitism Musk personified. As the debate continued, it became clear, this wasn't just about policy. It wasn't even about the future of one tech company or one politician. It was a fight for the nation's soul. Musk's empire had grown by exploiting loopholes, dodging regulations, and using his wealth to manipulate systems. Meanwhile, Crockett had built her reputation by standing firm against that very system, challenging the corporate overlords who thought they could make their own rules. For Musk, the debate was personal. This wasn't just about defending his business, it was about maintaining control. If Crockett, the voice of justice, exposed his empire for what it was, the very foundation he had built his fortune on would crumble. Musk knew that once public opinion turned against him, once the legal system started to hold him accountable, it wouldn't just be a legal loss, it would be a personal one. For Crockett, the stakes were equally high, though her motivation was driven by something greater than self-interest. This was a chance for her to demonstrate that the law, and by extension, the government, still had power over the mighty. If she lost this debate, if Musk was allowed to continue playing the system, it would send a message to the country that no matter how much wealth or power you had, you could escape justice. It was a fight for democracy itself. The clock was ticking. Every second that passed, the weight of the debate grew heavier. The public was watching, the cameras zooming in on every word exchanged. The audience could feel it, the growing pressure, the sense that something monumental was on the brink of unfolding. Musk's arrogance and interruptions were more than just attempts to derail her arguments. They were symbolic of everything she was fighting against, everything that was wrong with the system. Every time he cut her off, belittled her, and tried to drown out her voice, he was showcasing the very privilege she had spent her career trying to dismantle. The air in the room seemed to thicken. The crowd, waiting with bated breath, could sense it too. This was no ordinary political debate. It was a battle for the heart of America itself. And Jasmine Crockett wasn't backing down. This battle was far from over, and Musk was about to meet his match. Elon Musk had long cultivated the persona of a man who could do no wrong. A genius. A visionary. A man above the rules, laws, and norms that bound everyone else. His accomplishments, SpaceX, Tesla, Neuralink, The Boring Company, were revolutionary, reshaping entire industries and propelling him into the stratosphere of the world's wealthiest. But with this meteoric rise came something darker, a deep, almost reckless arrogance that seemed to permeate everything he touched. Musk's public image was meticulously crafted, of course, carefully curated to maintain the aura of the maverick genius who was too big, too important, to be bogged down by petty concerns like regulations, laws, or government oversight. But the reality beneath the surface was far more troubling. For years, Musk had made a mockery of the very systems that were supposed to hold him accountable. He wasn't the kind of businessman who played by the rules, he was the kind who bent them, broke them, or simply ignored them altogether. Whether it was dismissing safety regulations at Tesla, downplaying environmental concerns at SpaceX, or even flaunting labor laws, Musk had built his empire by exploiting loopholes, cutting corners, and using his vast wealth to shield himself from the consequences of his actions. Flashbacks to key moments in Musk's career reveal the deep roots of his arrogance. There was the time, back in 2018, when he boldly tweeted that he was thinking about taking Tesla private at $420 a share, a move that sent shockwaves through the market. The tweet was reckless, he hadn't even secured funding for the deal, but Musk didn't seem to care. He saw the SEC's subsequent investigation and his $20 million fine as little more than an inconvenience. He didn't apologize. He didn't even show remorse. Instead, he treated it as a game he was always destined to win. Then, there were the countless public clashes with politicians. In 2020, during the COVID-19 pandemic, Musk openly defied local government orders to shut down his Tesla factory, calling the decision fascist. When elected officials tried to hold him accountable, he dismissed them as out-of-touch bureaucrats, uninterested in the future. He'd fought back with a level of disdain that could only be described as contempt. His words, his actions, were never just about business, they were about power. Perhaps the most telling of Musk's personality, however, was his treatment of those who stood in his way. When critics dared to challenge him or his empire, Musk didn't simply respond with facts or logic, he attacked. He mocked. He belittled. His Twitter account, infamous for its combative nature, had become a weapon. Critics, journalists, and even politicians who opposed him were routinely branded as haters or uninformed. Musk's arrogance wasn't confined to just the digital realm. It was in the boardrooms, in the factories, in the very way he ran his businesses. Workers at Tesla and SpaceX had long reported poor working conditions, long hours, and unsafe practices. Musk, ever the unyielding authoritarian, often dismissed such claims, calling them exaggerated or even false. When a former Tesla employee filed a lawsuit over racial discrimination, Musk's legal team moved swiftly, trying to suppress the case with settlements and non-disclosure agreements. For Musk, the legal system was a tool to be manipulated, not a force to be respected. And yet, none of this seemed to faze him. His wealth, his influence, and his image as a tech visionary gave him an almost godlike status in the public eye. He could get away with anything, no matter how reckless, how dangerous, or how egregious. The system had failed to check him, time and time again. He was above the law, at least, that's what he believed. It was this overwhelming sense of invincibility that made Musk so dangerous. Every decision he made, every controversial statement he uttered, was rooted in the belief that no one, especially not a politician like Jasmine Crockett, could challenge him. He didn't just see himself as a businessman, he saw himself as a force of nature, untouchable by the rules that governed everyone else. As Musk's empire continued to grow, so too did his ego. He became more dismissive of anyone who dared to question him, particularly politicians, whom he viewed as naive, stuck in the past, and unwilling to understand the new world he was building. And in many ways, he was right. The political establishment had struggled to keep up with the rapid pace of technological change. Politicians like Crockett, who understood the importance of regulation, of accountability, were rare. And Musk had long counted on that. But there was one thing Musk never counted on, someone who would stand up to him without flinching. Someone who wouldn't bow down to his wealth, his power, or his ego. That someone was Jasmine Crockett. Jasmine Crockett didn't come from privilege. She didn't have the smooth path that most people thought a rising political star should have. No silver spoon, no family connections to leverage, no trust fund to cushion her fall. What she had was grit. An unbreakable will forged in the crucible of hardship. She grew up in a working-class neighborhood on the outskirts of Dallas, Texas. Her parents, both teachers, worked tirelessly to provide a stable life for their children. Their modest home was filled with books, history books, law books, books about justice and equality. It wasn't much, but it was enough to plant a seed in Jasmine's heart. From an early age, she saw firsthand the ways in which the system could fail people, especially those who looked like her. Her parents weren't just educators, they were advocates for the voiceless. They taught Jasmine that education wasn't just about getting good grades, it was about empowering yourself to change the world. Knowledge is power, her father would say, his voice steady but passionate. It's your shield and your sword. Never forget that. Jasmine carried those words with her every step of the way. But it wasn't easy. She saw how her mother, a black woman working in a predominantly white school district, faced discrimination at every turn. She watched her father pour everything into his students, only to see them fall through the cracks of an underfunded system. As a teenager, Jasmine knew she wanted to do something about it. She wasn't going to let the world treat her or her community like they didn't matter. She would be the one to stand up, to fight back, to make sure the voices of the unheard were amplified. Her journey wasn't without its obstacles. She was accepted into a prestigious law school, but her path was never paved in gold. There were moments when she questioned whether she truly belonged there. She'd walk into lecture halls full of well-to-do students, many of whom seemed to see the world through a different lens. Privilege and wealth had made them blind to the struggles of people like her. They didn't know what it was like to come home after school to a house where the power might be out, or where there was barely enough to eat some nights. But every time she felt the weight of doubt creeping in, she remembered her parents' words, knowledge is power. Law school wasn't just about mastering the intricacies of statutes and case law. It was a battleground for identity. Jasmine had to learn how to navigate a system designed for people who weren't like her. But she didn't just survive, she excelled. She fought back against every obstacle, every condescending look, every comment that told her she didn't belong. And she did it by putting in the work. She understood that in the world she was trying to break into, competence wasn't enough, you had to be better than everyone else, always. So, she was. She outworked them all. She started her career as a civil rights lawyer, representing individuals who had been wronged by a system that was supposed to protect them. She took on cases that others wouldn't touch, cases where the odds were stacked so high, they seemed insurmountable. One of her first major cases involved a group of tenants facing illegal evictions by a powerful real estate corporation. They were poor, they were black, and they had no voice, until Jasmine showed up. She spent months building a case, digging through mountains of evidence, meeting with her clients at odd hours, fighting off the opposition with a relentless drive. It was that case that made her reputation. She won. She took down the corporation and ensured that her clients received not only compensation but a voice. The victory wasn't just a win for the tenants, it was a win for justice itself. Jasmine had shown that even the most powerful institutions weren't beyond the reach of the law, not if the right person was willing to stand up for what was right. As her career progressed, Jasmine didn't just take on corporate malfeasance, she went after systems that oppressed marginalized communities, systems that were designed to keep the status quo intact. Whether it was fighting for voting rights, advocating for better healthcare in underserved communities, or pushing for police reform, she never wavered from her core belief: the law was meant to protect people, not corporations. And she would stop at nothing to ensure that it did. Jasmine's rise in the political sphere was inevitable. She was a natural leader, someone who didn't just speak to people but made them feel seen, heard, and understood. She was unapologetically herself, and people responded to that. They saw in her not just a fighter, but someone who represented their hopes, their struggles, and their dreams of a fairer world. She wasn't a politician who came from a world of wealth and connections, she was a politician who understood the pain of the people, because she had lived it. She knew what it meant to fight for every inch, and she had no intention of backing down. But it was during her time in office that she began to face the true forces of power, forces that sought to dismantle everything she had worked for. Enter Elon Musk. Musk represented everything Jasmine fought against. He wasn't just a businessman, he was a symbol of the unchecked corporate greed that had long been eroding the country's legal and economic systems. Every law he bent, every regulation he disregarded, made her blood boil. He wasn't just challenging her beliefs, he was threatening everything she had built, everything she had fought for. Jasmine had always known that there would be battles ahead, but facing someone like Musk, someone who felt above the law, pushed her to her limits. It wasn't just a fight for her career anymore, it was a fight for the future of the very people she represented. The more Musk tried to shut her down, the more Crockett was determined to stand tall. And now, she was about to make her move. The tension in the room was palpable as the debate reached its boiling point. Musk had interrupted Jasmine Crockett 6 times already, each interruption more dismissive than the last. But this time, the stakes were higher. With each word exchanged, the crowd seemed to hold its breath. Musk wasn't just trying to silence Crockett, he was trying to break her, to provoke her into losing control. As Crockett began to address the issue of corporate accountability, Musk leaned forward, a smug expression twisting his face. "Ms. Crockett, let's be clear," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "You're talking about accountability like it's some kind of magic solution. Do you honestly think that stifling innovation with regulations is the answer? You're out of touch with reality." The crowd shifted uncomfortably, sensing the rise in hostility. Musk supporters exchanged knowing glances, almost as if they were waiting for Crockett to falter. But Crockett didn't falter. Her voice remained calm, measured. "You're right, Mr. Musk," she replied, her words cutting through the tension. "Regulation isn't a cure-all, but it's a starting point. When corporations like yours repeatedly violate public trust, it's not just about innovation, it's about the people who suffer in the process. The people who lose their jobs, their homes, their rights." Musk scoffed, his arrogance on full display. "Oh please, don't pretend like you understand how business works. You think regulations are the answer to everything? You're trapped in the past, living in a fantasy where government can control everything. The real world is about progress, about moving fast and breaking things." The crowd murmured at Musk's words, some visibly uncomfortable with the blatant disregard for the very people his companies claimed to serve. But the billionaire continued, pressing forward with his belief that the rules didn't apply to him. "You want to talk about accountability?" he challenged. "How about you look in the mirror, because this isn't about you or me, it's about a system that's broken and outdated. It's about my companies changing the world while you're stuck in some bureaucratic nightmare." Musk's attempt to provoke her was clear. He was trying to get under her skin, to throw her off balance. He wanted her to snap, to lose her calm, to make the audience see her as emotional and out of touch. But Crockett wasn't going to give him the satisfaction. She stood taller, her gaze unwavering. "I'm not interested in playing your game, Mr. Musk," she said, her voice steady but firm. "This isn't about you or your ego. This is about the future we want to build, a future where the powerful are held accountable, where the system works for the people, not just for billionaires like you." Musk's face tightened, his eyes narrowing. "You really think you're going to change anything?" he shot back, his voice laced with mockery. "You're just a small-time politician, trying to fight against the very forces that built this country. You don't understand what it takes to innovate, to lead. You don't understand the first thing about making things happen." The audience shifted again, tension building with every word. Crockett's responses were surgical in their precision, but Musk's interruptions were relentless, each one aimed at diminishing her credibility. He was throwing everything he could at her, insults, accusations, and condescending remarks, but she wasn't giving an inch. The room was thick with anticipation. The people watching could feel the battle intensifying. Musk was used to getting what he wanted, to bulldozing over anyone who dared challenge him. He thought this would be no different. After all, who was she compared to him? A politician with a single term under her belt, up against one of the world's most influential figures. But Crockett wasn't like the others he had silenced in the past. She wasn't intimidated by his wealth, his status, or his power. She wasn't about to let him dominate the conversation. As Musk leaned in again, ready to speak over her, Crockett raised her hand, her fingers poised in a gesture that signaled she wouldn't be silenced. "Mr. Musk," she said, cutting him off with quiet authority. "You can keep interrupting me, you can keep belittling me, but at the end of the day, you cannot silence the truth. The truth is that corporations like yours have gotten away with murder for too long. And no amount of insults or distractions is going to change that." The room went silent. Musk's lips curled into a tight smile, as if trying to mask his irritation. He had never been confronted like this before, not in this way, not with this kind of clarity, this kind of steel. But before he could respond, Crockett continued, her words steady and unwavering. "The truth is, people like me, people who fight for the rights of the people, are the ones who will ultimately win. And you, Mr. Musk, will learn that the hard way." Musk opened his mouth, ready to launch another attack, but his words were cut off as he realized that Crockett wasn't just standing her ground, she was reshaping the narrative. She was turning the tide. And in that moment, something in Musk's demeanor shifted. The smirk was gone, replaced by something that looked like uncertainty. But Musk didn't know, his next interruption would set the stage for something he couldn't possibly anticipate. Jasmine Crockett stood at the podium, the weight of the moment pressing against her. She had endured Musk's interruptions, his dismissive remarks, his arrogant challenges, but this was her time. The tension in the room was palpable, every eye fixed on her. Her composure, her calm, had become her shield against the relentless barrage of Musk's attacks. But now, it was time for the sword. She took a slow breath, glancing at Musk, who stood across from her with his usual smug confidence. His posture was unyielding, arms crossed, as though he thought he had already won. He hadn't. Not yet. "Mr. Musk," she began, her voice steady, unwavering. "You've made it clear tonight that you believe you can bend the rules. You've told us that your innovation is untouchable, that the law doesn't apply to you. But here's the thing, innovation cannot exist in a vacuum. It must be rooted in a society that upholds the values of fairness, equality, and accountability." Musk opened his mouth to interrupt again, but Crockett was quicker this time, her voice rising in authority. "I'm not done, Mr. Musk," she said, her eyes locking with his. You've built a legacy of disruption, but I'm here to tell you that disruption without responsibility is nothing more than exploitation. The crowd shifted, murmurs rising as they sensed what was coming. Musk's expression faltered for a moment. He wasn't used to being spoken to like this. He was used to dominating the room, but Crockett had made it clear that she wasn't intimidated by him. The issue here, Crockett continued, her tone measured but filled with an underlying strength, is that you have systematically disregarded the very laws that protect people in this country. You've used loopholes, manipulated regulations, and dodged the consequences of your actions, all while profiting off the labor of others. Musk's jaw tightened, his irritation becoming more visible. He had heard critics before, but Crockett wasn't like the others. She wasn't throwing empty accusations, she was speaking with precision, with facts. You say that you're a visionary, a creator of a better future, she went on. But the reality is that you've built your empire on the backs of workers who have been exploited, on communities whose environments have been damaged, and on a legal system that you think can be manipulated to serve your interests. The words hung in the air. Musk opened his mouth to respond, but Crockett raised a hand, silencing him. You like to talk about innovation, Mr. Musk, she said, her gaze unwavering. But let's talk about the real innovation, the kind that actually benefits society. The kind that ensures workers aren't injured on the job, the kind that ensures communities aren't destroyed by toxic waste, the kind that values people over profits. And that's where you failed. The crowd was silent now, hanging on every word. Crockett's voice had a clarity and conviction that commanded their attention. Musk, on the other hand, seemed to be growing more defensive, his attempts to regain control of the narrative faltering. She wasn't done yet. Let's look at Tesla's labor practices, shall we? Crockett continued, her voice cool and methodical. You've had workers at your factories filing complaints for years, complaints about unsafe working conditions, about being forced to work excessive hours without proper compensation, about being punished for speaking out. And every time one of these workers has tried to take legal action, you've buried their cases, silenced their voices. You've used your wealth to manipulate the system, to make sure that no one holds you accountable. Musk's eyes flicked to the side for a brief moment, his posture shifting slightly. This was hitting too close to home. He could feel the room turning against him, but he wasn't about to let it slip away just yet. Are you saying that I'm personally responsible for every single complaint that's ever been filed? Musk shot back, his voice strained with indignation. I run a company. I don't control every aspect of every factory, every decision made by every employee. That's absurd. Crockett didn't flinch. It's not absurd. It's accountability, she said, her voice sharp. As the CEO, as the person in charge, the responsibility ultimately falls on you. You've created a culture of fear and silence, where workers are too afraid to speak up because they know the consequences: harassment, termination, legal threats. You can't hide behind your title and pretend that your company's actions aren't a direct reflection of your leadership. Musk's face flushed with frustration. He wasn't used to being held accountable like this, especially not in front of an audience that was growing increasingly sympathetic to Crockett's words. But here's the real kicker, Mr. Musk, Crockett said, her voice dropping slightly, as though she was about to reveal the truth he could never escape. You've also found ways to avoid paying your fair share of taxes. Your companies benefit from taxpayer-funded subsidies, but somehow, you manage to pay almost nothing in taxes while raking in billions. You want to talk about innovation? What kind of innovation is that? Innovation that benefits only the ultra-wealthy while the rest of us foot the bill. The room went silent. There was no mistaking the impact of her words. Musk's confidence, which had been so apparent just moments before, was crumbling before their eyes. You've been playing the system for years, Mr. Musk, Crockett continued, her words now like a hammer, each one driving deeper. But you can't keep doing it. Not anymore. Not when the people are watching, not when the people are demanding answers. The truth is, you've built your empire on a foundation of exploitation and greed, and the legal system, whether you like it or not, is finally catching up to you. There was a pause, an electric stillness in the room as the weight of Crockett's words sank in. Musk's expression faltered. For the first time, he seemed unsure, his posture deflating as the full force of Crockett's argument hit him. The crowd's reaction was immediate, applause erupted, a roar of approval for the woman who had just turned the tables in this debate. They were witnessing something monumental, something they had never seen before. The billionaire mogul, who had spent years untouchable, was suddenly on the back foot. But Musk didn't know, his next interruption would set the stage for something he couldn't possibly anticipate. The moment Jasmine Crockett had delivered her mic-drop counterattack, the world seemed to pause, holding its breath. Musk stood there, a visibly shaken figure, as the applause rolled through the room. What had started as a debate quickly transformed into a spectacle, a cultural lightning rod. The ripple effect of her words didn't just stop at the debate hall. It exploded across social media, reverberating through the very fabric of public consciousness. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, every platform was flooded with reaction. The hashtag Crockett takes down Musk was trending within minutes, quickly becoming the #1 topic worldwide. People were sharing clips of her triumphant rebuttal, each one more electrifying than the last. Clips of Musk's face falling as Crockett methodically dismantled his empire's foundations were reshared millions of times. The internet was ablaze with praise, memes, and raw admiration for the woman who had taken on one of the most powerful figures in the world and left him speechless. Jasmine Crockett for president, one tweet read. It had thousands of retweets and likes, with responses flooding in from across the political spectrum. Others posted images of Crockett's powerful moments during the debate, her face unyielding, eyes steady as she took control of the narrative. "This is what leadership looks like," one post said, accompanied by a photo of her standing tall, her hand raised, silencing Musk with nothing but her presence. Meanwhile, Musk's defenders attempted to reframe the debate. Musk was out of his league, one pro-tech advocate tweeted, trying to spin the narrative back in his favor. But their efforts were met with scorn. The public had witnessed something rare, a true David versus Goliath moment. And in this case, David wasn't just surviving, she was winning. Commentators and political analysts jumped into the fray, offering their expert takes on what had just transpired. MSNBC's Rachel Maddow tweeted, "Jasmine Crockett's handling of Musk was masterful. A sharp legal mind, unshakable composure, and a reminder that no one is above the law, not even tech billionaires." On Fox News, the tone was a bit different. The right-leaning network was quick to praise Musk's business acumen but couldn't ignore the growing wave of public support for Crockett. One analyst, Charles Krauthammer, remarked, "Crockett's victory represents something larger than one debate. It's a moment in time where the public is demanding accountability from the very elites who have been untouchable for too long." The news wasn't limited to political commentators alone. Celebrities were weighing in, adding their voices to the conversation. Actress Kerry Washington tweeted, "Crockett is everything. She just showed us how to hold power to account." The tweet was shared thousands of times, with fans adding their own support in a wave of social validation that couldn't be ignored. A particularly viral meme that circulated had Crockett's face photoshopped over a powerful scene from The Avengers, with Musk's face on the villain, Thanos. "We've got a new superhero," the meme's caption read. It was funny, sharp, and unapologetically pointed, everything the internet loved. The meme had millions of likes, and it quickly became the symbol of a growing movement, a movement that was no longer going to accept the status quo of tech oligarchs running roughshod over the law. In response, Musk remained largely silent. He didn't tweet anything for hours, uncharacteristic for someone so plugged into the social media conversation. When he did break his silence, his response was defensive and terse: "Debates don't change the future. Innovation does." It didn't resonate. The crowd wasn't listening to Musk's tired rhetoric anymore. They had seen what true leadership looked like, and it wasn't coming from a tech billionaire, it was coming from a lawyer who had spent her life fighting for the people. At that moment, Crockett's victory wasn't just personal. It wasn't just about one woman taking down one powerful man. It was about something much larger, a cultural shift. A reckoning with the unchecked power of corporate elites, and a public demand for accountability. People who had been on the sidelines for years, resigned to the idea that billionaires were untouchable, now saw someone who had stood up and shattered that illusion. They saw someone who had not only survived the system but had outsmarted it. Every social media platform echoed with Crockett's victory. News outlets that had once been skeptical about her future now looked to her with renewed interest. Political strategists were already speculating about her future, some even suggesting that this debate had launched her into the national spotlight as a force to be reckoned with in upcoming elections. The narrative surrounding the debate had shifted. What had been framed as a contest between a powerful tech mogul and a rising politician had now become something far more significant. The battle between Silicon Valley's untouchables and the people's representatives was out in the open, and it was no longer clear who had the upper hand. Musk's brand, once synonymous with cutting-edge innovation and revolutionary ideas, now looked vulnerable. The public's perception had begun to change, and there was no going back. But as the world celebrated, there was one final question lingering: what would Crockett do next? She had shown the world what she was capable of, but her true challenge was just beginning. She had taken down Musk, but the battle for accountability, for justice, was far from over. The applause from the crowd was deafening, the energy of the room a tangible force that seemed to reverberate through every corner of the nation. Jasmine Crockett had done it. She had taken down Elon Musk, the untouchable billionaire who had long been a symbol of power and privilege. But as the noise of victory continued to swell, Crockett stood still, the weight of the moment settling around her. She had won, but this victory was about more than just one debate. As the applause began to fade, Crockett took a slow breath and stepped to the microphone once more. This time, her voice was calm, but it carried the strength of someone who had just fought, and won, a battle that was much larger than herself. Tonight, we've seen what happens when truth stands firm against power, she began, her eyes scanning the crowd. We've seen what happens when we demand accountability, when we refuse to let the powerful, whether they be tech moguls, politicians, or anyone else, escape the consequences of their actions. The room grew silent, every word hanging in the air as if the country itself was holding its breath. The moment had transcended the specifics of the debate. This wasn't just about Musk anymore. This was about something far greater, something that was pulsing through the heart of every American watching. This victory isn't mine, Crockett continued, her voice steady but filled with an undeniable passion. It's not just about me standing here today. It's about all of us standing together, standing up for justice, standing up for integrity, standing up for the values that make this country great. Because those values are under attack. They've been under attack for too long. But we can change that. Her words struck a chord in the audience. For the first time, they realized that what they had witnessed wasn't just a political win, it was a moral one. In a world where power and influence often seemed like forces beyond anyone's control, Crockett's victory was proof that one person could make a difference. One person could challenge the system. One person could stand up to those who believed themselves untouchable. We've all been told that the system is rigged, Crockett continued, her eyes sharp with resolve. That the powerful are beyond reproach, that they can do whatever they want because they have the resources to buy their way out of anything. But I'm here to tell you, that's a lie. That's a lie we've been fed for far too long. The crowd began to nod, as though her words were exactly what they needed to hear. They had been conditioned to believe that their voices didn't matter, that the powerful would always have the final say. But now, they saw Crockett, someone who looked like them, someone who had fought her way up from humble beginnings, taking on one of the world's richest men and winning. This isn't just about a debate, or about Elon Musk, or about any one individual, she said, her gaze unwavering. This is about something much bigger. This is about reclaiming our dignity. It's about reclaiming our future. And it's about reminding those in power that they are accountable to us. Her words were like a spark. They lit something in the room, a fire that spread, one that had been waiting to be ignited. The applause that followed was thunderous, not just for Crockett's triumph, but for the idea that had been planted in the hearts of the people. The idea that power didn't have to remain in the hands of the few, it could be reclaimed by the many. And yes, Crockett continued, we're facing a system that's stacked against us. We're facing a country where the wealthy and powerful have had every advantage. But what they don't understand is this: we are stronger than they could ever imagine. We are the ones who build this country. We are the ones who fight for justice. And when we come together, when we stand united, we can move mountains. The energy in the room shifted again, this time to something that felt even more important than just victory. It felt like a turning point, a moment in history where the balance of power was shifting, where the people's voices were rising, no longer silenced by the weight of money and influence. Crockett wasn't just calling for political change, she was calling for a moral reckoning. Tonight, we've proven that integrity still matters, Crockett said, her voice rising. That doing the right thing still matters. That standing up for what's just and fair still matters. And we've shown that no one, no matter how powerful, no matter how wealthy, can escape the consequences of their actions forever. Her eyes burned with the clarity of someone who had just crossed a threshold, a person who had not only fought for what was right but had proven that the fight could be won. But this victory is just the beginning, she said. Because we will continue this fight. We will hold the powerful accountable. We will demand justice. We will never back down. And we will do it together. The room erupted once more, but this time, it was more than just applause. It was a declaration. A rallying cry. The people were ready. They had seen the power of one individual standing firm against the tide, and now they knew that they could do the same. Crockett stepped away from the microphone, the weight of the moment settling around her like a mantle. She had won the debate, but more importantly, she had started something. A movement. A movement that was about more than just one person, it was about the future they wanted to create together. This wasn't just about one debate, one victory, it was about the future they wanted to create together. A future where justice wasn't a privilege for the few, but a right for all. A future where integrity and courage could defeat arrogance and power. And Crockett knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning. Tonight, we witnessed something truly remarkable. We saw a powerful figure, a billionaire who had long been untouchable, challenged not by another tech mogul, not by a politician with an endless war chest, but by one woman armed with nothing more than truth, courage, and integrity. Jasmine Crockett's victory isn't just a personal triumph. It's a message to all of us. It's a reminder that no one, no matter how powerful, is beyond accountability. It's proof that when we stand up for what's right, when we fight for justice and equality, we can take down even the most entrenched systems of power. But this isn't just her victory. It's ours. This moment belongs to everyone who believes in fairness. To everyone who refuses to sit quietly while the powerful continue to exploit and manipulate. To everyone who knows that integrity, courage, and truth are the real forces that will change this world. Now, it's time for us to act. This is just the beginning. The fight for accountability, the fight for a better, fairer future, isn't over. But it can't happen without you. Join us in this movement. Share this video with your friends, your family, your co-workers, anyone who needs to hear this message. Spread the word. We're stronger when we stand together, when we hold those in power accountable, and when we demand justice for all. So, subscribe to this channel. Be part of the change. Because the future we want, the future we deserve, is within reach. But only if we keep fighting for it. And the time to fight is now. Let's make sure the world hears our voices. Let's make sure the powerful know they're not above the law. This is just the beginning.